Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Odyssey, the podcast where we explore the highs and the lows of entrepreneurship, featuring the bold and the brave who dare to dream. Every episode, we dive deep into the strategies that work, the challenges that teach, and the moments that change everything. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, these are the insights and experiences you need to fuel your own Odyssey.
Hi, I'm Brandon Moore, and welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur's Odyssey. I'm glad that you've decided to listen or watch, and I'm hoping that this will help you. I'm thankful that you're a part and watching. Please give us a like or a share if the content is what you're needing or if it's helpful to you. I appreciate it. Also, give us some feedback. Let us know if there's some topic that you want to talk about in the future. We'd love to talk about those things that are interesting to you, that are important to you. So today's topic, we're going to talk about leadership. And I do have a chapter in my book about the entrepreneur's journey about leadership. And today we're going to talk about that every business owner should work on your leadership skills. And there's a few things that you can do to help those skills grow and help you mature in those leadership skills. So let's talk about that today. And I'm excited to get going. So here we go. The first thing that you can do to help your leadership skill is find a mentor. I could not do any of the things that I've done without a mentor. In my real estate book, I talk about the 5 people that I have on my team, and one of those was a mentor. I had several mentors, and 1 or 2 of them probably didn't even know that I considered them a mentor. I just asked them a bunch of questions. My first real estate deal, I talked to one of the pastors on staff at our church, and he was also a realtor and an investor. I talked to him for 3 or 4 years before I ever decided to pull the trigger and invest in real estate. He meant so much to me, and all of his patience and kindness and how he showed me and talked to me and told me what to do and when to do it. And even on the first purchase, he was the first person when the water heater didn't work, he came and tried to help me fix that. And I had no obligation to do it. He just, because he wanted me to succeed, he helped. And I just appreciate him so much. He's since passed away, but he's been such an impact on my life, and I'm sure many others. You know, when you have a mentor, there's a couple of things that you need to make sure that you do. And if you have the luxury of knowing the mentor in person, and you make appointments with them and you talk to them, it's important that you respect their time. If you say, hey, I just need 30 minutes, at the 29th minute, it's time to leave and let them get back to whatever they're doing. Another thing with the mentors, I bugged Pastor Daryl, that's his name, about real estate for years. And then finally he told me, Brandon, at some point you're gonna have to pull the trigger. You're going to have to put an offer on a house. You're gonna have to buy something. And that told me that when you talk to mentors, you have to take their advice. There was a couple of years ago, actually it's been more than 10 years ago, that there was a guy that would come to our church, and he told me, he said, I really want to get to know you. I want to be, I want you to speak into my life. I want you to do all this. And then when he asked me for my advice and I shared it, he just ignored it. And he did that 2 or 3 times. And so after that, I just didn't want to share anymore. I didn't want to be a part of his life anymore, because obviously what I said didn't mean anything to him. So if you have a mentor and they're sharing their advice, at some point you're going to have to pull the trigger. You're going to have to take their advice. The second thing that you want to do is study leadership. There are so many books, so many podcasts. There's the Gerald Brooks podcast. It's all about leadership, and a lot of that's church leadership. There's Craig Rochelle, who's a pastor, but he has a leadership podcast. There's a leadership conference. I think it's called the Global Leadership Conference. It happens every year with tons of leaders that come out and share their story. And that's just such a great resource. The books that are out there and available on leadership, they're just innumerable. And some of them I concede aren't that great, but a lot of them really, really are. John Maxwell has tons of books that are about leadership. Craig Rochelle releases a couple of books every other year. Both of those are prolific writers, but there are so many resources, so many areas that you can gain knowledge. in leadership. Just the fact that you're listening to this podcast tells me that you want to gain knowledge and you want to improve and be the better version of yourself. Let that expand, not just in the financial podcast, but in leadership podcasts. In every area of your life, you need leadership. Because what is leadership? Leadership is influence. Influence is, you have influence with everybody. You have influence with your spouse, with your kids, with your teachers, with your boss, with your employees. So leadership is so important. There's so many books on it. I could recommend a few of them right now. One is Never Split the Difference. It's a book on negotiation. John Maxwell has the Developing the Leader Within You and Developing the Leaders Around You, which I like that book so much, Developing the Leaders Around You, because I didn't do a good job of seeing outside of myself. I sometimes get tunnel vision. I'm driven and I'm set and focused on a goal, and sometimes I forget the people around me. And that book really helped me to open my eyes and look around and see what's going on. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about the books that I've written. This one is called The E-Hero's Journey. It's the first book that I wrote, although the second book that I published. This book is one of the books that we're going to go through on this podcast, but it will really help you in your journey as an entrepreneur. It's just an overview, but it kind of talks about some challenges that you might. The next book that I wrote is called The E-Hero's Guide to Real Estate Investing. This book is an overview about real estate investing. We've always believed that we should have a second cash flow method, a separate revenue, one or more lines of revenue. For us, real estate was an easy choice because we had mentors that were in real estate. And so we started our real estate journey in the same year I graduated in 2000. And that year we bought 3 houses. We got up to about 110 houses. We've sold a bunch since then, but now we're about at 50 or so. But this book will help you start that journey and help you build up your real estate portfolio. This third book is called The Beginning of Wealth, and this is how these 7 wealth behaviors will help you reach financial independence. I wrote this book in about 3 months. This is something that's in me so strong, and I didn't know it until I started writing it. There are 7 behaviors that I talk about, and the first 4 have nothing to do with money. They have everything to do with being a steward, being disciplined, having a vision, having focus. So this book could be great for you and for your friends or for your kids if you're my age. So all of these books I wrote with my kids in mind, my adult children, because these are all books that you can read as you start your journey, and by the time that you finish your journey, you'll be very satisfied with how things worked out. So there they are. They're all on Amazon, and you can also get them on my website at brandonkmoore.com. Another thing about studying leadership is observing. We all have leaders in our lives. And if you watch them, you're going to learn one or two things. You're going to learn what to do, or you're going to learn what not to do. I know the people that were in my life in the early part of my years probably learned what not to do. And I'm hoping that later now that they're learning what to do. I still make mistakes. So anybody that's watching this, please forgive me. But if you will just observe the things that are happening around you and observe, how did that person handle this? How did they manage that dispute with a client? How did they manage that dispute with church members or members of the worship team or members of the small group leaders? Those are key moments. And if you pay attention and you watch for that leadership nugget or that leadership gold that's going to be there, you're going to grow in your leadership. So the next thing that you can do to grow in your leadership is practice. Practice what you learned. It's not enough to read books over and over and over and over again. You've got to practice. You've got to take that step and put into practice some of the things that you've learned in the books or podcasts or from mentors. Now, when I say practice, what I mean too is that not only are you doing what you've learned, but you're analyzing what the results are. Practice is a time where it's not the game. Practice is a time where you have the ability to put something into practice, and then because you're aware that this is new, this is something you haven't tried before, you haven't done before, you can take notes and make note of what worked and what didn't work. Another thing about practice, and I say it all the time, I probably should write down how many times I say it during a week. I love Jim Collins in his book, Great by Choice. He talks about firing bullets and then firing cannons. And to me, that was monumental, that if you start out small, so if you're going to put something into practice, if you're going to practice a leadership skill, if you do it in a small setting, maybe for me, I might practice with my kids because that's a safe setting. It's experimenting with your children, but it's still a safe setting because you love them, they love you, and if you make a mistake, you can ask forgiveness and get it. If you put it into practice in a small setting, then later, when you're in a larger setting, or if it's a more imperative setting like your job or at the church or somewhere else, then you've already got practice in that area and you've seen it work before. What's the next thing that you can do to improve on your leadership? And this one is probably hardest to do. It's allow input. It takes a lot of humility and a lot of security to let somebody tell you what you've done wrong, what you've done right. A few months ago, I submitted a speaking engagement to somebody, and I asked them, tell me what you think. And I was really ready to hear all the critique, all the negative, but also I was hoping that there'd be a positive in there. And I got some really honest feedback. And, when you have that honest feedback, it sometimes can sting a bit, but that honest feedback is what makes you aware so you can make changes going forward. If you don't become aware, you can't make the change. You can't make any change in your leadership process. You can't make any change in how you deal with people. Asking for feedback is important, not only with your leadership, but sometimes with your clients. I had several clients that left, and I sent them an email. I said, I'm sorry that you decided to move on to another CPA or another financial advisor, but I'd love to hear any feedback that you can give me to help us improve going forward. And sometimes you get some really nasty comments and you just delete those emails. And sometimes you get really honest feedback. And when you get that honest feedback, then you can do something about it. I had a client that had left, and her comment was, well, we didn't leave because you didn't do anything right. It's just our brother or our sister or our family member has gotten his license, and so we just decided to go that way. And so I'm here making this thing in my mind about all the things that I could have done better, and it had nothing to do with that. It was just the time and season that their family was in. They had somebody that could do the job, and so they went with a family member, which is I totally agree with and would support them if they wanted, if they had told me up front. So these are the areas that you can use to improve your leadership. First, find a mentor, somebody that you can follow on social media, somebody that may be in person, somebody that you can read everything that they've written and put their advice into practice. 2 is study leadership. Study books, study podcasts, study and observe the leaders around you. Take in what's happening around you as a student of leadership, not just somebody floating around in life. And 3rd is practice what you've learned. Sometimes that practice might be in small increments, firing bullets first and then firing cannons, using small amounts of resources and then really going big. And so you might choose to use a coaching method of leadership with a small team. And once you see that improves and see how that team is motivated through the coaching method rather than command and control, then you can start to use it on the team abroad and with everybody in your organization. The last thing is allowing input, being humble enough to receive feedback, positive and negative. Those things will help you develop your leadership, help you grow as a person, become the best version of yourself. I hope that this helps you. I hope that you'll take it and put it into practice. I hope that I'll hear lots of comments in the future about how these things have helped you develop your leadership skills. Thanks for joining the Entrepreneur's Odyssey. Great to see you. Great to have you on, listening to the show, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Odyssey. We hope today's journey has left you inspired and ready to push the boundaries of what you thought was possible. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to rate and review us, and share this episode with someone who could use a little inspiration on their entrepreneurial journey. Join us for more insights and stories. Until then, keep chasing your dreams and write your own Odyssey.